So what things do you think don't work?
They're overrated.
Yeah, like some of that overrated,
Uh,
gimmicky stuff.
so I would say
BFR.
BFR,
You
yeah.
say it.
Yeah, I think that was a nice little phase. It's quite funny because we obviously get asked by loads of clients, don't we, about it?
I mean, we've got some BFR fans in the office.
Yeah, we very kindly were giving them. Let's not say there's not no case for them. I do think for injury there's still a good case. I don't think we're educated enough in using them to be like definitively these are not good enough to work. But in my experience, I don't see the point when you have got a healthy athlete that can train. They don't need another stimulus. They should be motivated by the training you're giving them without having to give them a gimmicky toy. So yeah, it's definitely, that's a good example of something that came into fashion, and the reason why no one's using it at the wall is because there's a limited use for it.
This podcast is not sponsored by any BFR company.
Yeah. But once again, there is probably a good case study for it. I know a lot of people that have been introducing it. I've used them myself. I have tried it out, but for us personally, day-to-day practice, coaching practice, it's not something we use. I think overrated climbing stuff, I think it comes down to what level you're at, and I do think it makes a difference. Like I said, you can take lessons from the top and go down. There is a lot of simple stuff that goes across the spectrum. But say like, I made a few notes on I think we were talking about overrated stuff before. So beginners, I think fingerboarding. Fingerboarding is good to learn grip positions, and I think it's good to build some robustness. But in terms of finger strength and like improving your climbing, I think there's too much emphasis on it. I'm not saying it's not important. There's too much emphasis. If you're a beginner and we're talking up to sort of V4, V5, just get climbing, get on the wall, get your movement good. Your fingers will get stronger climbing. I think more of an intermediate climber or like passionate amateur is project bouldering. Not enough, too much time working at your max intensity and just not doing enough volume. I think like you just don't pick up the movement skills, you don't get the strength base, you just focus on this top end. Your injury rate is going to be higher because you're always trying to perform hard, and see it time and time again. Like, why have you got a tweak? It's because you're always trying too hard. So those climbers probably more looking at around V6 to V11. Too much time trying to do top end because that's what you're seeing on films and training. Like a lot of the best do a lot of volume in that range. So get the volume in as well. You can still boulder, still go on the board, but just do reps of boulders. And that's far more productive. And like look at it kind of like a hypertrophy, anaerobic capacity style training where you get a lot of volume in and you might find yourself getting stronger anyway. So I'd definitely give that a go. And then elite, I think controversial topic here is too much low intensity stuff. I don't actually think many elite athletes do this, other than those that are looking in the UK. Alex Barrows, I'm talking to you, who want to perform on really long stuff and they're in the UK most of the year. I do think arking's good, but realistically it costs a lot of skin, costs a lot of time. You're going to get it in your warm-up anyway. And if you're really an elite athlete, you should be doing a lot of intensity and you should be able to cope with a lot of intensity in the week. So I think too much arcing, too much focus on arcing is overrated. But that's a very controversial topic, and I might come back in 5 years' time and be like, oh, arcing's the best thing ever. But I'm currently debating with Cam, one of the coaches here, on this, and a good friend of mine, Joel, that I went to university with, who is a doctorate in sports science. He teaches at Derby University. I know he was an elite cyclist, and we're discussing this a lot. But from my experience, the amount of climbing you can do at high intensity, whether that's still on a slab or vert climbing, a lot of movement-based stuff, particularly for comp athletes, it doesn't necessarily need to be easy, but it could be a really long session. Again, the Japanese boulder for 8-hour sessions. They're not doing low intensity bouldering, but on and off the wall, it ends up being like almost an arcing stimulus anyway, rather than traversing around on jugs for 40 minutes at a time. So I think that's a controversial one, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I love traversing around on jugs for ages, Ollie. Though.
I know, but we're talking about the elite here, so.
Oh, okay, you got me. I would say the one thing that I feel like is really overrated, and people don't always grasp this, especially in the uncoached or the intermediate level range, is untested or uncritiqued methodology in anything.
Yeah.
Like that's for me is the overrated thing. So people hear something from Ollie's on a podcast, says whatever it is great. And then they immediately go into using that and adopting that into all their training without critiquing, how is this actually affecting my performance? How am I responding to this stimulus? They just go in blindly. That for me is the major kind of mistake or overrated thing, that you hear about something from someone, even if it's got really good sound rationale for it, but then don't critically look at it and then track it over time. And then, you know what it's like, we've talked to people who've done something for seasons in a row without actually really questioning whether the thing works, because they just heard the scene in Sheffield. Everyone's doing this, or Patchy's doing it, or Alex Barrows is doing it, you know?
It's the, I think they call it the expectations effect, which plays a massive role. We've seen this both ways. Is, you know, if someone, it's like a diet system or any kind of belief system, religion even, it's all about how much do you believe in this scenario. The more belief, the more effort, focus, you can have a huge effect on the outcome of doing that. So people buy into stuff and they follow protocols. And if you pretty much change any physical stimulus, you're going to get better for the first 4 weeks. It's all about neurological changes. And it's got to be a pretty bad protocol if you don't improve in the first 4 weeks. Usually meaning a reduction in training load. But if you change that, if you're still making progress after a certain amount of time, a lot of that can come down to that expectation effect. There's a fantastic book actually called, named Expectation Effect. You can see in medical research, people can be told that they're using a placebo and they know they've got a placebo and it still has a placebo effect. So if someone sees a Mills 2 hangs a day, 2 fingerboard sessions a day, it has got some sound evidence and I can understand the principles of how it could work. But if you really go into those sessions and you focus on that half print position, you focus on what you're doing, you're really dedicated to it, that expectation of getting stronger will play a huge role in how your physiology reacts to that. Vice versa, we see it the opposite way, where we provide training plans that are not gimmicky. They are, you've got a coach that's supporting you, they've created a plan. It might look a little bit boring compared to what you're expecting, compared to some online YouTube scenario. Yet, if the athlete is like, oh, this isn't right for me, this isn't enough for me, you get a nocebo effect. And I've seen this with elite athletes that worked with us, and it's like heartbreaking to actually go through. And it's purely down to their psychology going into it. Because then when you question them afterwards about what they're doing or what they've done prior, the stimulus might actually be very similar, but because they've got a new belief or a new system around it, that's why it works. So yeah, I do totally agree that it's overrated when people jump on these things. But I think the reason they work is because people want to believe in something. They want an identity in their training. So whatever you align yourself to, it's going to have a good effect for a little while. And the critical point is to take a step back and understand, is it making a difference compared to what I did before, irregardless of that belief system and structure? Because if you go and do BFR for 3 months, but you're dedicated to a fingerboard session with BFR on every 3 days, were you doing 3 days of dedicated fingerboarding without the BFR beforehand to compare? That's the critical analysis that you need to take. But if you believe in it, that's the other thing. If you make improvements, go for it. But it would be nice that, like you say, people had a bit more of a critical view on it.
Yeah.
Not to be cynical.
Me and you, cynical?
I know.
Never.
I know.
Been in it too long.